Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. It is June 28th, 2023. Let's talk boxing, but first remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Just a few quick thoughts, then let's dive into Canelo against Jermall Charlo. But first, Jermall Charlo, one of the world's best fighters. I would argue right now the best at 154 pounds. I know the Tim Zoo crowd thinks differently. We'll find out when those two enter the ring. He recently had a rant where he talked about how boxing needed a pension system. Right? You know, that sounds very 1980-ish. I hope Jermall Charlo figures out how underfunded the pensions are in places like Chicago, places like the state of Kentucky. Right? Boxing has a very vulnerable group. It's a young group. They can barely understand what's in their managerial and promotional contracts. You're going to then overlay that with a pension system, right, that is just rife for administrators to rip off the group, like several pension holders are being ripped off nationally, right? My point is, give yourself a personal pension. Consider staking cryptocurrency. Just a thought. Ethereum, Dash, you name it. Or buying an annuity. Let's switch gears. In boxing, rather than complain about the utter absurdity of some of the demands in the sport, I'd rather just be grateful and praise those in boxing who insist on integrity. For that reason, let me take this moment to praise cruiserweight champion Badou Jack. He was asked to defend his title for big money against a big-time opponent at a catch weight. Not 10 pounds, not 15 pounds, 20 pounds below the cruiserweight limit. He said no. Right? Think about it. A vet looking for big paydays before the end of their careers, saying no to a big-time title defense. As Jack put it, this is his quote. They said the weight difference is too much. They wanted to drain the old man and fight me 20 pounds under the cruiserweight limit for the title, plus a rehydration clause. Right? I applaud him. An argument can be made that this is one of Badou Jack's best performances professionally. I want to congratulate him for his principled stance. Let's all hope that in this ridiculous boxing world, that cruiserweight champions get to defend their cruiserweight titles at the cruiserweight weight limit going forward. Anyone seeking a cruiserweight title needs to be prepared to do so at the cruiserweight weight limit. That should not be too much to ask. Could you imagine looking at that weigh-in? You see Badou Jack and you're thinking, Badou doesn't look good. Right? Then he steps on the scale. Then they say, not 200 pounds, the weight limit, they say 180 pounds. At that point, the value of your Badou betting slip would have sliced in half. Let's hope the sport doesn't try to surprise bettors that way going forward. Finally, before I get to the fight, let me salute David Benavidez. As I've learned watching Terence Crawford for years, I've noticed that the great fighters in the sport sometimes have to campaign and lobby for years to get the big fights even when they themselves are unbeaten and have held belts. Fans like me are going to continue to mention Benavidez' name when he is being avoided. I'm mentioning him here. Now let's talk about the fight between Canelo and Jermall Charlo. I like Canelo to win this fight for a variety of reasons. In other words, I'm picking Canelo to give Jermall Charlo, the hitman, his first loss. Now just understand, there's a height dynamic in this fight. Canelo is 5'8", right? Let's keep it real. I don't want to go by published numbers and stuff like that. I've watched enough weigh-ins and I've looked at him standing next to certain people to know Canelo is 5'8". Pound for pound in boxing, he hits extremely hard. He not only pound for pound is one of the best in the sport, pound for pound, he's one of the hardest punchers in the sport. He also has a very high boxing IQ and is defensively blessed, right? He's also been active against tough competition. Sometimes we see a guy and we say, hey, he didn't look that dominant. Well, that's because he's fighting Golovkin, who is still very tough. That's because he's fighting John Ryder, who, in my eyes, has already beaten Callum Smith. Right? I view Ryder as underrated. Let me point out, too, that Canelo, 5'8" already, 4 inches shorter than the 6-foot-tall Jermall Charlo. Right? Canelo can fight small. He's hard to find when he is right in front of you. And he is best, and I mean best, when he's fighting a guy who thinks he's a slugger. Think Avni Yildirim. Think Rocky Fielding. Think Callum Smith. Right? It's movers, in my opinion, like Caleb Plant and Dimitri Bivol, who give Canelo problems. Canelo doesn't want to have to find you. He's a craftsman who wants a pocket. Now, Charlo, again, 4 inches taller than Canelo, is 33 years old. And that's important here. 33 is too old to have been inactive, right? Charlo has not fought since June of 2021. Folks, he hasn't fought for 2 years. Now understand, in my opinion, since he's in against really one of the hardest hitters I know of, right? Charlo is going to need a back foot to survive. I don't care what the nickname is. They can give him Thomas Hearns' nickname. He's going to have to back up. By the way, just like Hearns had to back up when Hearns fought Sugar Ray Leonard. Right? Charlo here is going to have to back up to survive. Now, a back foot, more so than a front foot, in my opinion, requires activity. It requires sharpness. It is hard to maintain a good back foot when you're not fighting, when you have been out of the ring for 2 years, because a back foot requires timing, requires coordination, awareness. You're on your back foot. Hey, the ropes can't be right behind you because that would defeat the purpose. And it requires reflexes. A front foot, you can hide rust. If I hit hard enough, I can just dive in the pocket and throw big shots. Not so with a back foot. You show me a rusty back foot, and I'll show you a boxer who's taking chances. Now, I'm expecting Charlo to be rusty. I'm expecting him to be unable to find Canelo. Right? Canelo might look like he's right in front of you. Just understand, Canelo has his shoulders in the way, has excellent head movement. Canelo knows how to bend his knees, bend his waist, get low. A 6-foot guy is suddenly going to look at Canelo and realize, wow, he's lower than I thought. Right? Canelo can duck a jab. And keep in mind, Canelo can change a fight with one punch. Just ask Billy Joe Saunders. I like Canelo here. We'll see how the casino structures this. Just understand, I'm expecting unbeaten Charlo to get beaten up. I'm expecting Canelo to eventually catch up with Charlo. I think when you've been alpha, when you've been knocking out guys, when you're unbeaten and your entourage treats you as unbeaten, it's very hard to show up, realize that you're in against a harder puncher, a more skilled puncher, a better defensive fighter. It's very hard to then say, okay, I have to concede the pocket to this guy. I have to be the mover in this fight. Mentally, I believe that's going to be a tough pill for Charlo to swallow. But more important than the mental part is going to be the rust part. Right? He's really going to kick up his feet and move. You look at films of Ali in the 1960s. My God, that guy knew how to move. Right? Longtime subscribers here know that I feel that the Ali who beats Cleveland Williams is the best heavyweight I have seen. By the time Ali gets to the 70s, after he's out of the ring, right, because of legal problems, right, Vietnam, etc., when Ali returns against Joe Frazier and against Jerry Quarry, let's talk about the fight before the Joe Frazier fight, Ali's legs are gone. Understand, the Ali of the 70s, even though he still moved better than a typical heavyweight, the Ali of the 70s isn't close in terms of movement and a back foot to the 22-year-old who destroyed Sonny Liston. Or to the guy who's fighting Big Cat Williams. Understand, Big Cat was a hellacious puncher. And who just knew he could move out of the way on demand. And that he could rely on hand speed. So as Big Cat's throwing punches, Ali was able to decide to throw, land, hurt his opponent. Now here you have Jermall Charlo. He's been out of the ring. Injuries might have been involved. Failed negotiations might have been involved, etc. Right? Guys are out of the ring for a variety of reasons. But understand, now he's back in the ring and he's fighting one of the best. Now, I know the whispers are that Canelo has been fading in fights, right? He has a big lead against Golovkin. But you notice the last few rounds, suddenly Golovkin comes to life. He has a big lead against Ryder. But then you notice the last few rounds, Ryder comes to life. Right, so of course the scuttlebutt here is, hey, Canelo's a little past his prime. Canelo doesn't quite have the stamina that he once had. Right, here's the problem with that analysis. For Canelo's stamina to become an issue, you have to make it to the 9th round against him. Right, Abner Yildirim did not. Right, you have to make it to the last few rounds of the fight. And for those last few rounds to matter, You have to have banked enough early rounds, which is extremely hard against Canelo. You have to have banked enough early rounds so that fans are thinking, hey, if this opponent sweeps the last 3 rounds, an argument could be made that he's won the fight. I don't expect Charlo to be in the ballpark here. I'm expecting the rust to show from early. I'm expecting Canelo to be on his front foot. I'm expecting the dynamic to play havoc on Charlo's mental state. Right? If Charlo stays in the pocket and tries to trade with Canelo, good luck. Canelo's a hellacious body puncher fighting a 6-footer. In other words, a lot of body to hit. Canelo has ring coverage on one of boxing's best left hooks. Also, before we fall in love with Canelo's left hook, just understand Canelo is two-handed. Right? Also, in terms of Canelo dealing with power punchers, guys, he just fought Golovkin and Ryder. Let me point out that those are recent fights. We don't even have to go back to his fight against James Kirkland, right? Or his fight against Callum Smith. So I like Canelo. This is, to me, is the difference between a guy who's great right now, unbeaten hitman, Jermall Charlo. We'll call him the other Charlo. Right? It's the difference between a fighter like that who's great in the moment right now and an all-timer. Right? I can't think of an era when Saul Alvarez wouldn't be able to show some level of dominance. Right? Canelo, hard to hit, outsized puncher, excellent skill-wise, two-handed, can finish you on body shots. In my opinion, he has the upper hand in this fight. I like Canelo. I'll be surprised if unbeaten Jermall Charlo goes the distance. And I say that knowing that Canelo just went the distance against Ryder and also was forced to go the distance by Golovkin. And of course, Callum Smith went the distance with him. To me, this is a great setup where casual fans are going to look at Canelo, are going to hear the scuttlebutt about Canelo, who is younger, by the way, than Jermall Charlo. They're going to hear the scuttlebutt about Canelo being a little bit past his prime, and they aren't going to realize that Canelo is still a cut above the hitman. At least this hitman. That's how I see it. I like Canelo to win. The way I'm going to play it is Canelo to win. Then I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on Canelo by stoppage. Because, folks, Rocky Fielding did not go the distance. Kovalev, a harder puncher, a bigger man than Jermall Charlo, did not go the distance. Caleb Plant, a tough fight because Plant's a mover, did not go the distance. There were a lot of quality guys who were unable to go the distance against Canelo. I don't think that trend is going to change. That's how I see it. Some on Canelo by stoppage. Let me hear from you. But I need for you to understand the risk involved. If Jermall Charlo, who's unbeaten as I make this video, wins the fight, you lose it all. For a fight where I thought Jermall Charlo was a bit exposed. In fact, I thought he lost the fight. I encourage people to watch him against Matt Korobov. Right? You see Charlo's athleticism. You also see Charlo out of rhythm against a guy who was a last-minute replacement. Right? People need to be careful about last-minute replacements. I hope Jared Anderson's listening to me right now. I'll make a video on that heavyweight fight. Very important heavyweight fight, him against Charles Martin, coming up. As Regis Prograis knows from his last fight, where he fought Danilito Zorilla and, quite frankly, was lucky to walk away with that decision. Right? Last-minute replacements are tough. You're not prepared for the opponent you're actually facing. Right? And there's a mental letdown. You've worked yourself up because you were going to face opponent A. Suddenly, here's opponent B. Casual bettors don't believe opponent B is as competitive. You lean back a little bit, get complacent. I'm telling you, boxing has no place for complacency. Right? I thought Karabov hurt. I thought Karabov hurt Charlo. I thought Karabov frustrated Charlo. Canelo, to me, is a guy who, whatever he says, studies film. That's obvious from the first round of his fights. Canelo comes in. Canelo knows who he's fighting. This is a student of the game. I'll be surprised if Charlo goes the distance. More importantly, I'll be surprised if Canelo doesn't have, let's say, a 4-round lead going into the 9th round, if it goes that long. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I know there are a lot of Charlo people out there. Right? I know. Right? Charlo's unbeaten. Okay. I'm picking on an unbeaten fighter. Fair enough. But wow, it's a tall ask. You're out of the ring for 2 years and they say, hey, player, fight Canelo. I believe that's asking too much. Let me hear from you. I look forward to your comments in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.